Well, welcome to Marking the End Times. I'm Mark Hitchcock, and as you can see, I'm not in my office in Oklahoma City. I'm here at the studio for Tipping Point. I was down here in Dallas. We have every year in December, we have a meeting of what's called the Pre-Trib Research Center, the Pre-Trib Study Group. We meet down here in Dallas. We've been doing that for 33 years. And so I was down here for those meetings. I actually spoke at the meeting yesterday on Wednesday. And so I came over here to the studios to do my program here today. So it's great to be here in this beautiful facility. But on today's program, what I want to do is talk about the fast moving developments in Syria that have unexpectedly, dramatically unfolded here just in the last few days. Rebel Islamic factions in a lightning fast offensive that lasted just 8 days. They toppled the bloodthirsty government of Bashar al-Assad that had ruled Syria for 54 years. Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, allegedly has fled to Moscow for refuge. But the ouster of the Assad regime is another in what is now a long list, a growing list, of tectonic shifts in the Middle East within the last year. It's another of these major turning points that we just keep seeing again and again. It all started about 14 months ago on October 7th of 2023 with the Hamas attack against Israel. Then we've had the Israel-Hamas war that's still grinding on. We had Iran strike Israel last spring directly with missiles for the very first time. We had Israel's counterattack on Iran that damaged some of Iran's nuclear program. Then we had Iran's counterattack to Israel's counterattack, and we're waiting for another attack now from Iran. And of course, we've had the Israel-Hezbollah war that now has entered in to a ceasefire. So it's just been incredible, just kind of one domino after another falling in the Middle East, and really these stunning sequence or series of events. After all this long series of these shifts that we're seeing happening in the Middle East, now we're witnessing another shaking and reordering and realignment in the Middle East with the sudden downfall of the House of Assad. So on today's program, what I want to do is analyze the geopolitical and the prophetic repercussions of the fall of the Assad regime and the city of Damascus. And I want to talk near the end of my time about the prophecy of Isaiah 17 about Damascus. I'm sure many of you have been wondering about that. I want to talk about that and how that passage is related to its context, what time frame that passage fits in. So those are the things I want to discuss on today's program. Now, before we get to that, I want to mention that at the end of our video, I want to go to the subscriber-only section. We're going to continue our study of the book of Revelation. We've been just taking kind of slow pace going through this exposition of the book of Revelation. And we've come today to the last of the 7 churches, the Church of Laodicea. A church with a great message, I think, for us today, for our churches, and for us individually. So we'll look at that together in a little bit in the subscriber-only section. 13 years ago, during what was called the Arab Spring. So many of you may remember that. Back in 2011 was an event called the Arab Spring. When that was going on throughout the Middle East, there was a rebel group that tried to oust Bashar al-Assad from power, the president of Syria. These Arab Spring uprisings broke out in several Middle Eastern nations, and they really spread like wildfire. I mean, in Egypt, Mubarak, the president there, was deposed. In Libya, Muammar Gaddafi was ousted from power. His government was toppled. And so all of this took place in 2011, but the civil war in Syria has been going on now for 13 years. So now, suddenly, after a brutal 13-year civil war, the rebels in Syria were finally successful, finally completed what began all the way back in 2011. There's a rebel coalition that came together. There's about 30,000 fighters in total. The main group is known as HTS. It's an affiliate of al-Qaeda. They broke away really from al-Qaeda in 2017. Now, with the fall of the House of Assad, there's optimism because this ruthless regime of Assad has ended. I mean, he was an avowed enemy of Israel. But there's also fear that Syria could break into various sects and ethnic groups. There are fears that Syria could end up like Iraq. When Saddam Hussein was ousted back in 2003, there's just been chaos ever since then, really, in Iraq. The same thing happened in Libya. When Muammar Gaddafi was deposed in 2011, since then Libya has really been ruled over by rival rebel gangs. So just everything is splintered into the various factions. So a lot of people are concerned that can happen there, and we really don't know what the ultimate outcome will be. But I want to answer a few key questions about what has happened in Syria and what we believe this may lead to in the future. So the first question I want to answer is just, how did this happen so quickly? I mean, in 8 days' time, just in a lightning fast assault, the government of Syria fell. Well, what happened is that these rebel forces seized a rare opportunity. Both Iran and Russia, who were really bolstering and kind of holding up the Assad regime, they got distracted with conflicts of their own. Of course, Russia is busy fighting the war against Ukraine, and Iran has been sidetracked with dealing with Israel, and of course the war between Israel and Hezbollah. So with them kind of distracted and they're taking their eye off the ball in Syria, these rebel factions seized on this opportunity, and just in this, again, lightning fast attack, they moved across the nation and finally took the city of Damascus. Now, what's the result of this event? Well, there are what's called winners and losers from this. The fall of Assad and his regime has been a major boost to some nations and a major blow to other nations. Primarily, it's been a major blow to Iran and to Russia. Russia has totally retreated from Syria. They've been consumed and distracted by their own war at home, and that's really pretty much dominated and absorbed all their attention. Iran has lost its major artery to send arms to its main proxy, Hezbollah, in Lebanon. So the fall of the Assad regime has basically shattered Iran's network of influence in the Middle East. Iran's axis of resistance, as it's known, is in tatters. And many believe that there could be growing fear among the mullah regime in Iran, a great fear that there could be regime change there. You know, this all started way back in 2011 with the Arab Spring. Again, the leader of Egypt was ousted, the leader of Libya was ousted. Now we have Assad ousted 13 years later. And so there may be a lot of fear there. And Iran is very isolated. And of course, this is causing Iran now to accelerate its nuclear program because they realize that the nukes are really the only thing they have now as a deterrent. Russia has lost its major foothold in the Middle East. Russian bases in Syria are in danger. They have a major port in the area of Tartus in Syria. Several of the ships have left their Russian ships, I think in fear that may be overrun. So those are two of the main losers. Now, this has been a major boost to Israel, to the U.S., and to Turkey, and really also to Europe, because it's probably going to slow down the flow of migrants coming in to the land of Israel, because, there have been millions of people who fled Syria. About half of the people in Syria have left the country during this civil war. Turkey has risen to ascendancy now in Syria. So Iran and Russia have lost there, but Syria is the great nation who's gained. They're now the major external force in Syria. It's interesting, Turkey shares a 560-mile border with Syria. And Syria, or Turkey, effectively controls parts of northern Syria. So this is a major boost to President Erdogan's desire to create a new Ottoman Empire. And remember, this is the same person, President Erdogan in Turkey, who threatened some time back to actually invade and come down and help the Palestinians in Gaza fight Israel. He's the one who just recently severed all ties between Turkey and the nation of Israel. Now, another thing, this has been a great boost for Israel. Israel has occupied now the Syrian side of Mount Hermon, the 9,000-foot mountain there that's part of the dividing line between Israel and Syria. Israel has entered Syrian territory on the ground for the first time since 1973, since the Yom Kippur War. Because Israel wants a big buffer zone so that what happened with Hezbollah in Lebanon doesn't happen with Syria. They don't know what these terror groups there in Syria might do. So Israel is expanding this buffer zone. But it's amazing. Troops from Israel now are inside Syria, establishing this larger buffer zone. And Israel also has seized this opportunity to hit Syrian bases, to hit weapons depots and places where chemical weapons are stored. And so they don't want these weapons to fall into the hands of these Islamic terror groups that have overrun the government there. Now, what is the prophetic significance of this event? Well, again, we see this alliance of these Gog-Magog nations just continuing to come to the forefront. An article in The Guardian, a headline says this: "The fall of Damascus sidelines Russia and brings Turkey to the fore." So Russia and Iran have been sidelined now, but Turkey now has been brought to the fore. The Moscow Times has a headline that says Turkey, Russia, and Iran meet in Doha. That's a city, that's the capital of Qatar. It says they met there seeking exit from Syrian chaos. So it's still these three nations, the three main players that will invade Israel, according to Ezekiel 38, that are still collaborating with one another over all the things that are happening. These are still the three key players in this region besides Israel. A second point of prophetic significance, I think, is this is just another round of Middle East chaos that just continues to cry out for peace. Syria has been an inveterate enemy of Israel since the formation of the modern state of Israel. And if somehow this can work in such a way that Israel has peace with Syria, that would be an unbelievable movement forward in what we know will ultimately be a peace agreement between the Antichrist and Israel in the future. You know, Henry Kissinger, the great American diplomat, famously said many years ago, "There can be no peace without Syria." And I think that's still true today. But we could see the beginnings of how that may come to pass. We'll have to see. And then finally, and this is what I alluded to at the beginning of our program, many people believe that this has implications for the Isaiah 17 prophecy and the destruction of Damascus. One of the next key end-time events, according to some prophecy teachers, is the destruction of Damascus, the capital of Syria. Now, this view is based on Isaiah 17, verses 1 and 2, which says this: "The oracle concerning Damascus. Behold, Damascus is about to be removed from being a city and will become a fallen ruin. The cities of Aurora are forsaken. They will be for flocks to lie down in, and there will be no one to frighten them." So those who hold this view maintain that Syria has never been removed from being a city, as Isaiah 17 says. So that this prophecy, to be literally fulfilled, must be fulfilled at some point in the future. Now, specifics about how it's going to be destroyed differ among different prophecy teachers. Many believe it'll be a nuclear attack of Israel into Syria. There's been all kinds of different ideas, but some believe it's an event that could happen very soon. And when this text is quoted, usually just the first two verses are cited. Again, let me read those. "The article concerning Damascus. Behold, Damascus is about to be removed from being a city and will become a fallen ruin." Now, what's interesting, though, is if you keep reading that passage, it becomes apparent that whenever this destruction of Damascus occurs, Israel is also going to suffer devastation. So in Isaiah's day, Ephraim was the name for the northern kingdom of Israel. And notice that at the same time Damascus is destroyed, according to Isaiah 17, Israel is also destroyed to the northern part of Israel. Let me read what it says here in Isaiah 17. "The fortified city will disappear from Ephraim." Again, the name for the 10 northern tribes of Israel. "And sovereignty from Damascus and the remnant of Aram. And they will be like the glory of the sons of Israel, declares the Lord of hosts. Now in that day, the glory of Jacob will fade, and the fatness of his flesh will become lean." It will be even like the reaper gathering the standing grain as his arm harvests the ears, or it will be like one gleaning ears of grain in the valley of Rephaim. Yet gleanings will be left in it like the shaking of an olive tree, 2 or 3 olives on the topmost, 4 or 5 on the branches of a fruitful tree, declares the Lord, the God of Israel. In that day, man will have regard for his Maker, and his eyes will look to the Holy One of Israel. Now, many prophecy teachers maintain that Isaiah 17:1 is a future prophecy of the destruction of Damascus and Syria that'll pave the way for Israel to become a great and prosperous nation. Yet it's interesting, in Isaiah 17 it says, at the same time Damascus suffers devastation, Israel will also fall. So I believe it's much better to hold that Isaiah 17 was fulfilled back in the 8th century BC when both Damascus, the capital of Syria, which was destroyed in 732 BC, and Samaria, the capital of Israel, a decade later was destroyed in 722 BC, that all of this was destroyed at that point in time by the Assyrians. Now you say, well, what about this statement in Isaiah 17:1 that Damascus will be removed from being a city and become a fallen ruin? Well, you'll notice what this passage does say and doesn't say. It says that Damascus will be destroyed and made a heap of ruins and removed from being a city. And that literally occurred in 732 BC when Damascus was destroyed by the Assyrians under a ruler named Tiglath-Pileser. Notice the text does not say that Damascus would be removed forever from being a city. It simply says it'll be removed or taken away from being a city. So Isaiah 17 is a prophecy about a temporary desolation that happened to many nations in the ancient Near East when they were destroyed by invading armies. But nowhere does Isaiah say that the city would never be rebuilt or inhabited again. So I believe that Isaiah 17 was fulfilled in the ancient past. So I don't believe that events today portend the imminent fulfillment of that passage. Let me mention a couple of other things here in the context. It's always critical that we put a text in its context. And again, before you get to Isaiah 17, the verses right before it, again, I'd encourage you to take your Bible and read this. The very end of Isaiah 16, the last verse, verse 14, says, "But now the Lord speaks, saying, within 3 years, as a hired man would count them, the glory of Moab will be degraded, along with all its great population, and his remnant will be very small and impotent." So he says, within 3 years, the nation of Moab is going to be destroyed. And that's obviously a very near prophecy. When you get down to the end of chapter 17 of Isaiah, he talks about the enemy that destroyed Israel is going to be destroyed. They're going to be taken away like a dust. And we know that that's what happened to the Assyrians who conquered the northern kingdom of Israel. 185,000 Assyrians were killed in one night. So when you have Isaiah 17, the passage right before it at the end of chapter 16 refers to a near event. Within 3 years, Moab will be destroyed. Near the end of the chapter, it refers to a near event where the Assyrian army would be destroyed. And so it makes sense to me that the material that's in between the destruction of Damascus was a near event as well. So you say, well, if you don't take Isaiah 17 to refer to Syria, then what is Syria's future in the Bible? Well, there are a lot of nations that we're not told specifically what will happen to them. I think it's likely to me that Syria will be one of the many nations that are mentioned in Ezekiel 38 verse 6. That when Gog and Magog, when Russia and Turkey and Iran and these nations come against Israel, Ezekiel 38 verse 6 says there'll be many peoples with you. That Syria probably will be part of that invading force that comes into the land of Israel as well. But as we see these really world-shaking events, the thing that you and I need to constantly remember and focus on is that God is the sovereign stage setter, who's moving the pieces into place to fulfill the end-time drama that's going to begin when Jesus Christ comes back for His bride. And my prayer is that He will come very soon. We're going to go to the subscriber-only section now. In that subscriber-only section, again, we're going to finish up our teaching in Revelation 2 and 3 on those 7 churches. And we're going to talk about the church of Laodicea. If you're not a subscriber, you can go to endtimes.com and you can sign up there for just $7 a month. We'd love to have you as part of our community here. And we'll go now to the subscriber-only section. We'll continue this exposition of the book of Revelation. We'll talk about Jesus' message to the church of Laodicea.